Welcome to the Old Fashion Masonic Podcast, where we drink... What do we do? I think we drink old fashions and talk about masonry. I'm Brian.
I'm Dave.
Dave?
Well,
what do we have here?
We are blessed with the presence of Right Worshipful Stephen Crane. Thank you for joining us today.
Happy to be here.
Welcome to the podcast. So, have you... I think I know this. Have you ever seen an episode?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, more than one?
2 or 3.
Okay. Was the first one... Did the first one get pointed out to you because I had an interesting stance on the per capita and how it should be allocated with DeMolay? Was that the first time that it got pointed to you?
No,
Okay.
I actually have seen it before.
Yeah. Like, yikes, go back and look at that one. I was like, I'm about to get scolded here. So, all right, before I get scolded, so as we do on every episode of the Old Fashion Masonic Podcast, we like to know as much about the man as we do the Mason. So without Freemasonry, pull that to the side. Who is
I was born in San Diego.
Okay.
My grandfather and father, we had commercial fruit orchards, and we raised about 60,000 turkeys a year. So I spent my Saturday morning shoveling turkey stuff.
Yeah.
And so I hate turkeys to this day. So don't serve turkey at anything because I'm going to throw it in the dump.
Oh, well, good thing you're a Mason. It's only chicken.
I like to see dead turkeys, but I don't like live turkeys. But anyway, I went to work for San Diego County Sheriff's Office and spent 12 years there and running around collecting crooks and doing a few things like that. And then I moved to northern Idaho and took a job as a lieutenant with a sheriff's office up there. And in the meantime, my wife saw an advertisement for a pharmaceutical veterinary sales rep that paid $400 a month more. And $400 a month in 1979 was some money.
It's real money.
And I got a company car, and I went around all over the Pacific Northwest talking to veterinarians. And I had to kind of adjust my sales process.
So you dealt with drugs from a different angle.
Yeah.
No drugs on the street, now you're selling it to the vets.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I had to change my behavior because in my previous occupation, it was either sign the ticket or go to jail. I don't care what you do.
Right.
Well, I can't do that with a veterinarian.
Well,
I kind of had to be a little more persuasive.
Some finesse.
Right.
Yeah.
So I managed sales force in the Pacific Northwest for about darn near 20 years. Mm-hmm. And so it covered Alaska, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, western half, North, South Dakota, Colorado, Utah, parts of Nevada.
So you didn't spend much time on the road?
No, about 250 nights
Oh, my goodness.
a year I was in a hotel room someplace.
Man.
Which was a good thing because I planned my routes based on when lodges were open.
All right.
So I could always attend the lodge, Tuesday or Wednesday or Wednesday.
That is a cool thing about masonry, though.
So that was kind of fun.
Yeah.
And then the company moved me to Topeka, Kansas in 2002.
Did you upset somebody?
Well, here's a funny thing. Now, you can't let my wife watch this, however.
No, I've got no...
when the company,
Mrs. Crane, I'm not trying to bully you.
When the company brings you into the corporate office,
Yeah.
you have to get interviewed by the people that are in the corporate office.
See if you're a good fit.
And they want to make sure you're a good fit in the corporate world.
Makes sense.
And there were 5 people that interviewed me. 4 said, yeah, my God, we need to bring him in because he's got some skills here. This is going to be a good thing. The 5th one said, no, we shouldn't bring him in. And that happens to be the woman I married. So it took me a little while, to move her around, but it worked out.
That's awesome. That's not a joke? That's real?
No, that's
my
real.
gosh,
Yeah,
that's great.
real.
Opposites attract.
Yeah,
No kidding.
apparently.
Something.
But she managed a group of veterinarians who dealt with technical issues in medicine with veterinarians around the world. They would either get phone calls or emails.
Yeah.
And my job was to provide them the technical data, the studies, and the technical information that they needed to support the decisions they were making on the medical treatment of a particular animal. So
Yeah.
that I did that, and then I spent my other half of my job was competitive intelligence for Hills, and retired in 2011, and here I am.
All right. Well, you retired from a vocation.
Yes.
So we'll get to the next part of that. So,
Yeah.
All right. So that's the man.
All right. So walk us through your Masonic journey, starting with how you got interested, how you got in, and then where you are today.
So,
At a very high level.
Yes, please.
So when I moved to northern Idaho, I bought a piece of ground right next door to another guy who was a retired LAPD motor cop. Well, I was leaving San Diego SO, and he was LAPD. We had an instant bond. And it didn't take Jay more than about 3, 4, 5 months before he decided it was time to get me involved in this cult thing called Masonry. And other than that, I'd never heard of it. I didn't know anything about it. But the more I talked to Jay, the more I thought this is a good deal.
So was he steadily priming the pump?
In the most subtle way an LAPD motor cop can prime
I understand.
the pump. Yeah.
So some today, let me ask you this. Can some today argue that would be recruiting, which I don't have a problem with that, because I think you have to go after good quality men, and you can call it recruiting, whatever you want, but good people travel in circles with good people. So did he recruit you a little bit?
Sure.
Yeah,
and I will tell you, I would be the first one to say that we need to take this 2B1 Ask One thing and throw it in the dumpster where it belongs.
Yeah.
So Jay got me involved in Lodge. I joined in 1989. Got my third, I think, in January of 90. Became master in 93. And then I was master 93, 94, 95.
Yep.
And I had to do it 3 years because my senior warden, who had finally done the work, and under Idaho rules, you have to have an unlimited lecture degree in order to be elected worshipful master.
I noticed that you had to have the master certificate that was issued in November of 92, which was fascinating. I didn't know what that meant. So understand this. To be a master in Idaho at the time, or is it still the thing?
Still the same.
You have to know what you're doing. You have to proof up.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah. I think it's a good thing.
I don't. I think it's a very bad thing. But we'll get into that.
Okay, or we'll push that to another side. So do you think it's limiting the pool?
Oh, absolutely. That's
Because
why we
you
have
have
masters in Idaho that have served as master of a lodge for 20 years.
So you're saying that there are other really good leaders that aren't as proficient, but they could be a hell of a leader for the lodge. And okay, well, you need a both, because we argue that. What would you rather have, a lodge full of X or a lodge full of this? But you can't have a blend. Okay, I like it. So that's your Blue Lodge. From there you went.
From there, I joined Scottish Rite, Shrine. Back in those days, you had to do Scottish Rite before you could join Shrine.
Stopped
Did
in
that.
2000.
A couple of years before I left, they wanted to start a New York Rite chapter up there in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and they needed the minimum 22 or whatever it was, so I signed up for that. And then I had a problem. I had 2 daughters that were in Job's Daughters, and I had a son. And my son was about getting to that age where he could join Job's Daughters. But I was informed by the guardian of Job's Daughters that was never going to happen. So I asked them, what do I do? And she said, well, I think there's this group called DeMolay. You might call this guy. So I called a guy who's still been my lifelong friend for 30 plus years now. And about an hour and a half, he drove up from Moscow to Sandpoint, and we sat down and had coffee. The next thing I know, I'm the chapter dad of a new chapter in Sandpoint that my son could join. So that was how I got involved in DeMolay.
One door closed, and you kicked the other one wide open.
So then when the company, at the time, I was in the Grand Lodge elected line, and we have an 11-year line in Idaho, which is also a bad thing. So you start out as Grand Pursuivant, you go to Sword Bearer, and you're elected year after year after year after year. And so I came here as a Grand Junior Deacon, I believe, and before I resigned from Idaho, I was, I think, Grand Senior, one or the other. And so, one door closes, because I would have been Grandmaster in 2009 there, and another door opens, and I ended up being Grandmaster at DeMolay.
So let me just look through this. So that was a very abridged version. You left as Grand Senior Deacon in 2003.
It was something like that.
Yes. So, trust me, I'm going to read fast. I talk fast, so I have to read fast. So he's a member of lodges in British Columbia, in Montana, in Topeka, in Paraguay, in Serbia. There's some honorary in there as well.
Yeah.
You left out the Eastern Star, which you're a life member, but that's what we're here to save you, so you don't have to have them call you. Member of the Shrine, 2 Shrine Centers. Is it Kalam?
Kalam.
Kalam and Arab. York Rite, although you demitted in good standing in 2008. The Grotto, the Black Fez.
But I rejoined York Rite here.
But you rejoined the... Oh, you did in 13? Yeah. Sorry about that. Left that out. So we were... Thank goodness we were corrected before the episode started. We were going to refer to him as most worshipful, but then we were reminded that outside... He was never Grand Master of a Masonic a jurisdiction, a state jurisdiction. So, but because in Idaho he was a district deputy, he keeps the right worshipful. However, outside the United States, you're referred to as most worshipful because of your being Grand Master of DeMolay. Did we articulate that correctly?
Correct.
Okay. So that's just page 1, folks. So in the Grand Lodge of Kansas, so he gets rerouted to Kansas. Gets right involved on the strategic planning committee for 2 years, on the finance committee for 4 years, fraternal relations from 2017 to present, was also Grand Junior Deacon in 2019. And then the DeMolay, he starts as chapter dad, goes into Grand Master, and then Grand Secretary as well. So you travel... We think, oh my gosh, I'm going to be in Pratt tonight. Wonder if there's a lodge meeting. You're like, well, I'm going to Paraguay. I wonder if there's a lodge meeting. I'm going to go over to Serbia and see my friend Andre, and maybe there's a lodge meeting. So how many countries have you set in a lodge? U.S., Canada. Let's knock those 2 out.
Oh, U.S. and Canada?
That's
probably...
No, those are just... Those 2. What
those
other
2?
Countries? We can't count California as a country, even though...
Oh, you mean all the countries?
Yeah. Yes.
32 countries, more than 50 Grand Lodges.
Oh, I was going to run out of fingers and toes there. So that's... wow. So think this through. When you guys complain about, well, I can't get to my Blue Lodge this month, I'm busy. 32 countries?
Yeah. In my year as Grand Master, I put 452,000 miles on Delta alone.
We've got no excuse, gentlemen. We've got no excuse not to get to lodge. And you know what? I'm as guilty as the next guy, so I need to be, as I'm pointing, I need to look at these that are pointing right back at me.
And this is a good opportunity. I got a call this morning from Grand Master Lucas Rensulik of Serbia. So I need a help here, brothers.
Oh, here we go.
He has a brother that belongs to Serbian Lodge who is coming to Wichita in 2 weeks. And he owns a bunch of Cessna aircraft in Serbia and has some kind of an airline. I need a contact with Cessna here in Wichita that I can give to this brother. So if there's anyone out there who can help me with that. I called Grandmaster Dale this morning, and he's checking too, but please help me find a contact for the Serbian brother.
The potentate last year at Midian Shrine, he's got some pull there. Okay. So we'll after we get done with this episode, we'll reach out and we'll see what we can do, and at least he can run it up the flagpole.
That'd be great.
So,
awesome.
See, that's the cool thing about Masonry, fellows. Masons, take a quick nap. Haters and people that are thinking about joining, this is what people don't understand. This is why they think Masons are cults. We're talking about it. Steve says, hey, by the way, I've got a friend in Serbia. We're like, well, who doesn't? And he's coming to Wichita. Yeah. And he's got, a fleet of planes. Yeah. Right. Who doesn't, right? I mean, all the stuff that we know. But I need a contact. There was no hesitation of like, well, who's the guys that good? If Steve says they're good, he checks out. So we're like, yeah. That's the thing about Masonry that they don't understand, is because we've all went through it the same way. And we take our we take oaths and obligations. We take those seriously, and that we're going to try to look out for one another when we can, as long as it doesn't cause us problems, right? And so we know that Steve wouldn't say, hey, I need help for this guy. He's kind of a scumbag. He wouldn't even put us in that position. So Masons, you can come back to listen now.
So, well, and if I can, and I'm sorry to take over on your show, that's a perception that's out there that Masons are all connected, and we're getting advantages.
We're a brotherhood.
Well, we're
and
definitely
that's
connected.
The primary thing. That is the heart of Masonry. Is we're a brotherhood. So when Grandmaster Lucas, who I've met many times and who I love to death, he is, by the way, a emergency surgeon in the hospital there, and is the author of most of the surgical books that's used in Europe. So this guy is a brilliant surgeon, right? When Grandmaster Lucas calls me on WhatsApp this morning, I'm going to answer.
Yeah.
Because he's my brother.
Yes,
Right.
sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we feel that brotherhood in the sense that it's a rule that we don't get into Masonry for financial gain.
Correct.
Right. However, I was just talking to my cousin last weekend. He's a potential candidate, so
Cool.
I'm excited. But the same question that many candidates have: what's the return on your investment? Right? What is it you get out of it?
It's a fair question, though, to me.
It is.
You're asking for their time.
What I always say to that is, if there's anything I ever need, if I need a mechanic, if I need an HVAC, if I need, any number of things.
A shoulder to cry on.
I should know. If
Sometimes.
yes, sometimes.
And it will never impress you more than when you start traveling around the world and you find brothers everywhere. For sure. I will never forget the first time my wife and I went to Serbia. We get off the plane and we're walking up the ramp. And at the top of the ramp, there's a guy with a uniform with an Uzi and another guy in a black suit. And I went, oh, crap, this probably isn't good. I mean, Serbia is not exactly a pro-U.S. country, right?
Right.
And we get to the top and the brother in the suit says, well, who I later found was a brother, said, are you Mr. and Mrs. Crane? And I said, yes. And he says, give me your passports. I gave him my passports, and I went, oh, crap, this is probably not good. He gives the passports to the guy with the Uzi, and he says, go get their luggage, get their passport stamp, and meet us out front. The brother, who was the director of the airport, who knew I was coming in,
Right,
and intercepted me, so I didn't have to go through customs. I didn't have to go get my luggage. It's the brotherhood of those kinds of things. And that's the critical piece. And you'll never feel it as strongly as when you land in some foreign country and you don't speak the language, you don't know the customs, you don't know the cultures. And here comes a brother who will guide you through that country.
And that makes the point better than I was going to make it, is that it's not about financial gain. It's about, I know somebody that's a brother that does anything that I can trust.
Yeah.
right. That has made
It's
that
that
promise to me somewhere
immediate
else.
trust.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the reasons I've never had concerns about traveling and having a health problem somewhere.
Right.
Because
That's a
no matter
great
where I go, members of the lodge are doctors, they are lawyers, they are engineers, they are whatever the heck they are. I mean, I was in Romania in October.
I mean, who isn't?
And my back was giving me problems. Like a dumbass, I flipped a tractor on top of myself last summer, and I'm still recovering.
Who hasn't?
And I'm still kind of recovering from that. And I get there, and Dr. Mohammed Basat. Mohammed is Muslim and is the most beautiful chaplain you've ever seen in the lodge. So Mo comes up to me, and he's an orthopedic surgeon, and he says, what's the matter with you? He's a good friend. And he's feeling around my back, and he's asking me all these questions. And he says, I'll be back. And about 20 minutes later, he comes back, and he has me held out my hand. And he puts a bunch of pills in this hand and a bunch of pills in this hand. And he says, take 2 of these tonight, take 1 of these in the morning, and then take 2 of those at night. And I did. And I got through, after a 25-hour flight to Romania, I got through with my back not killing me. And it just worked. So that kind of care that you're always going to find whenever you travel is really, really part of brotherhood.
That's awesome.
I love it. So all these organizations you're involved with, how many different languages do you speak? Not fluently. How many can you muddle through?
I can kind of muddle through Portuguese because of all my time in Brazil. I speak pretty fair Spanish because I grew up with Spanish-speaking kids in our farm in San Diego.
Yep.
So I can get by in Spanish.
Yep.
The kids in Brazil call me El Portunal. It means I have Portuguese muddled with Spanish, and they're kind of similar languages, but they're not. And so I'll try to talk, and I end up with Spanish and my Portuguese, and the kids just laugh their ass off at me. So.
All right. So we're going to kind of jump up a little bit here. In the past 35 years, what has changed the most in Freemasonry? I mean, it doesn't have to be a 35-minute dissertation, but if you were to put it in 500 words, what do you think's changed the most?
I think it's more than 35 years. And I think the U.S. Masonry lost its map some years ago. And I don't know whether to go back to the 1835 Morgan Affair, which created the 2B1 Ask 1 and all that dumb things we do. But when I get outside the U.S., Masonry is a very, very different critter. And it is vibrant, it's passionate, it's active. The average age of the members is 2-3 decades lower than it is here. They are growing, or at least stable. The only exception to that's UGLE. They're struggling like we are. But I'm not sure what the change was or how we got where we are. But we need to take a look outside of our little box, because things are doing incredibly well outside the U.S. and we should mimic and take a look at those things and understand them.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, and actually that kind of leads into my question. So given that state of affairs, going forward, at least in the United States, why do we object so heavily when a per capita or a dues increase is proposed?
I do not understand that, and yet we had the same issues in Idaho, Kansas, Oklahoma. I don't care where it is. It's kind of the same. I mean, our Idaho per capita now is $80. And
Per year.
Per year. The per capita here in Kansas, I think, is the lowest anywhere around, with the exception of Oklahoma. And Oklahoma gets away with it because they've got all this oil money sitting in the bank. They can do something different than we can. And when you look outside the U.S., the cheapest dues I've found anywhere in the world are in a little town called Encarnacion, Paraguay. It's in northern Paraguay. And they're about $65, $70 U.S. a month.
A month.
Per month.
A month, gents.
And just north of them, in Campo Grande, Brazil, is a lodge where the dues are about $450 U.S. per month. Per month. What do they do with that money? They are so active in the community that those funds are constantly being drawn on.
You can see them at work.
Yeah, well, yeah, you can. And like the little lodge in Encarnacion, they once a month they have a social night, and the whole family goes to the lodge, and the kids are running around the lodge rooms, and the wives are all gossiping. It's a night when the wives can come get dressed up, put on their makeup, socialize, do all the fun things. And if you think those wives are going to allow that brother to screw up and not take her to that monthly social event, right, you are not married. You're probably single or divorced.
Fair.
So in the lodge in Campo Grande with the really, really high dues, they operate a private school. So they take kids.
Wow, that's cool.
They take in kids, and I think they got about 400 kids that are bright. They're smart kids, but they don't have the money to go to a private school. And
they're investing in their youth.
Oh, big time. And
That's
the activities within, if the community needs something, the lodge is going to be the provider of that, or the horsepower to get it to happen. Yep. And we've lost that somehow, and I don't understand that. I'm contemplating a resolution to come before Grand Lodge, and you guys are going to think I'm crazy, but maybe this is.
I bet we won't.
Right.
So I'm going to recommend. My thinking is, and I ran this by our past Grandmaster Tracy the other day, and he hasn't even. It's so bad he hasn't even bothered to reply to me, but that's how crazy it is. I'm going to suggest we have a new 1856 club. So 1856 is when we got started, right? So I'm going to sign up, and I'm a prepaid life. I don't have to pay a dime, right?
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to sign up for the 1856 club, and you're going to deduct, the Grand Lodge is going to deduct $18.56 out of my credit card every month.
Okay.
$10 of that is going to go back to the lodge. So that's $120.
To your lodge.
My lodge.
Your primary lodge.
Your primary lodge.
Okay.
$120 are going to go back to the lodge. The remaining $8.56 goes to Grand Lodge. And half of that is to be set up in a fund to fix up some of these lodges we have that are really not our best picture.
Representation of our brain.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
A coat of paint and maybe some new boards on the front porch would go a long way with some of these places. So it's a voluntary thing. There's no requirement that you do that. But how many brothers would be willing to put $18.56?
First, it sounds cool, by the way. The 1856 Club sounds cool.
Yeah. I mean, we have a 1919 club in DeMolay.
Okay.
And we've got about 3,000 people that had $19.19, because that's when DeMolay started, deducted from their credit card every month. I'm one of those. How many of us have seen all the ads for Tunnel to Towers?
Oh, yeah.
$19 a month or whatever the heck it is. There are very few brothers amongst us who couldn't afford $18.56 a month. Okay?
I agree.
And for those who can't, great. And I would reward this, from Grand Lodge perspective. I would give you a white 1856 little lapel pin.
Okay.
After you've done 12 full months. After you've done 60 full months, you get a little silver one. And after you've done
whatever,
a bunch more months,
yeah,
you get a little gold pin. It says just 1856. That's all it says.
I like it.
And so that's my crazy idea for a resolution to come before Grand Lodge next March.
Well, if you pitch it, you're going to have a slew of people that want to be on a committee or a board for it. Write down my name on the list to consider. Okay. I would love to help you.
Because somebody's going to have to be the board, and the Grand Lodge is going to have to figure out, okay, we're going to have, after the credit card takes their 3%, that $8.56 is probably going to be $8. Whatever it is.
Yeah.
And half of that goes general fund, $4. Sure. The other $4 goes to this help out the lodges look nice fund.
And there'd be a committee to say, well, they're putting in the effort, let's try to help them.
Yeah. And I'd say as those funds build up, let the committee make the decision whether it's a loan, a zero interest loan,
right,
or if it's a grant. It's just a flat out grant, So
and it should be publicized. Hey, this month we did this, and they can see where the money's going. Yeah, and that's easy to do. This is in our lane. This is our lane as well. So.
I mean, I can't think of very many brothers in my own lodge back in Topeka or in other lodges I've been across the state who couldn't come up with. It's pretty painless. It comes off your credit card every month.
Yeah,
you don't
it's
see
subscription services.
Yeah.
So Kansas Masons, we're going to strong arm Steve. We're going to get him to push this through. So you're already prepped because he's only going to get 90 seconds on the floor to talk about it.
I know.
So we're hedging here. I think it's a great deal. We may re-release this again right before Grand Lodge because we can do what we want here. And but. If we see it on the laws, we're gonna pimp it.
In reality, our per capita here is just insane, and
insanely low. Right. Let's not have a confusion.
Right. Yes, insanely low. And when you look at the greater scheme of things, if we want to be what we used to be, which was an organization that did things in the community and was known for doing things in the community, that requires funds. Right? It just does. And
it does.
And our four brothers had those funds. I mean, look at the old lodge building in Salina that was so incredible.
Yeah.
We couldn't figure out how to build that today.
Oh my gosh.
And we've been living off wells that our four brothers drilled and fruit trees that our four brothers planted for way too many years. Right. And we need to correct that.
We need to figure out how to self-sustain a little bit better.
I like the way you put that. That's great. Yeah.
All right, so we're going to kind of fast forward here a little bit. Oddball question for you.
Mm-hmm.
If you had a superpower, what would it be and why?
If I had a superpower, I think it would be an ability to change people's minds.
Well, I know you'd use it for good. I'd use it for evil, but go ahead.
I mean, I've been pretty good.
A stronger power of persuasion.
Yeah, I've been pretty good at getting a lot of things done in the world of DeMolay and elsewhere. But it's always been a struggle, and it would be nice if I could just go, and not have to spend that.
Especially the super stubborn ones.
Yeah, okay. Not have to spend those days fighting the battle.
I get it. That makes sense.
Yeah,
that's fair. Yeah, you'd use it for good again. Yeah, we'd use it for evil. So you said time travel before, right?
Yeah.
Jake Galvok was a time
Jake
traveler.
was-
That would be
Yeah.
that would be kind of cool too. Although I don't know if I want to go forward. I don't know if I want to know
Ooh, yeah.
what's in the future.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to know if it's good.
I'd want to know if my
If it's good.
I'd want to know for my kids. I want to
Right.
fast forward. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, they're good.
I think about that. Kids, grandkids.
Yeah.
I'm so old. There's not much that anybody's going to be able to do to me. All right.
Yeah.
But it's my kids, and between my wife and I, we have 20 grandchildren scattered from San Diego to Quebec.
Oh my
So
gosh.
I worry about my grandchildren.
Yeah.
In what world they're going to face.
Yeah. And some people say that's not a political statement. That's a real life statement, because the state of affairs you're not going to feel the repercussions as much. We'll catch a clip of it, but our kids and grandkids
Yeah,
are
because you guys are 30 years younger than I am.
Yeah.
20.
Not quite. Maybe 30 there. Not me. So, all right. Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
So,
All right, another fun one. Living or dead, who would you like to sit down and have dinner with that you have never had a meal with before, and why?
Winston Churchill.
oh, he's a good one.
Yeah,
He's a good one.
There was a recent biography of him, movie kind of thing, and I'm sure it was fictional, and I'm sure there was a lot of stuff.
Based on a true story.
Yeah, sort of, kind of, But I would love to have been able to sit down with him and have a few glasses of these things and understand, because he lived through and did some incredible things. And
Controversial at the time, too.
oh, sure,
But
yeah. But he just taken over from Chamberlain, and he had a hell of a mess on his hands. And I think he would be a very interesting person.
I think he'd be a cool one, too. I think he'd be a really cool one.
What a great choice.
Yeah,
Seriously.
and seriously, and the time, but he dealt with a lot of stuff during his tenure.
He did.
I mean,
Yeah.
He did. I mean, he's looked at as he's one of those few individuals that you can consider a worldwide hero. Versus a national hero.
Yeah.
Right?
yeah, there's some people that didn't agree, but there's hard to challenge what he got accomplished.
Right.
Yeah, that's fair. Right. That's fair. All right. So now for the most important question of the podcast. One must go. So there'll be 4 things up on the screen. You have to pick. One, it was never invented, created, or whatnot. So you've got the DeMolay, you've got Shriners, Masonry, and the Grotto. One of those were never invented. They have to go forever. Who is it and why?
So part of the struggle we deal with in Masonry is, as you noted, I belong to everything.
Everything.
Okay. But I'm not active
Fair.
in all but 2. And that's Grand Lodge and DeMolay.
Okay.
Because I don't think I can properly contribute well to that many organizations.
You support by funding with dues here, but I'm active and give my commodity of time on the left side.
So of those 4, I'm going to have to, sorry guys, but I'm going to have to cut Grotto out.
I was a charter member of Grotto, have a fez in this podcast room, but I also kind of pushed that to the
I got into Grotto quite by accident.
Yeah.
When I was executive officer at Kansas DeMolay, I got invited to go to a Grotto meeting and give a talk about DeMolay. And I thought, okay, fine, no big deal. And it was over in Kansas City. And I assumed this was just a local Grotto group.
Yeah.
I walked in the room, and it was the national Grotto meeting.
Huh.
And I was not prepared for that. And the thing that absolutely blew me away was the number of Grotto members that were honorary Legions of Honor or active Legions of Honor at DeMolay.
Right.
And so at that point, I joined Grotto, and I continue to contribute, but
support.
But I just don't have the time.
It's a bandwidth thing.
Yeah.
It's a bandwidth thing.
You spread yourself too thin, and you get nothing done.
Well, you talk about multitask. Oh, I'm good at a lot of things. Well, why can't you be just great at a couple? Mm-hmm. Because you start to you start to do so much. You can't be. You start to lose some of the quality that you once brought to the table.
One of the dangers in getting retired is you don't learn to say no quick enough.
Yeah, we've got some great advice for the years. Learn to say no.
I serve on the Clinton Cemetery Board, trustee at church. I serve on the Property Crimes Task Force for Douglas County. And I need to say no more quickly.
Yeah.
So,
Well, there's also the other adage. You find the busiest guy in here, you get them on a committee, they'll move the needle. So it's kind of a catch-22 there too.
It is.
But in Masonry, I'd also look at it and say, the guy that's over in the corner is being quiet. Let's see what he's all about.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe let's put him to work. We talk about putting Masons to work. So
Yeah, we need to do more of that.
we do.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching the Old Fashioned Masonic Podcast. Thank you for joining.
Brothers.
Cheers.
Cheers.